All right, where's the anxiety clock? Right there. All right, cool. So while I was thinking about how am I going to start, I was actually looking at the brochure of the conference that says Unleashing Human Energy. Now, as a psychologist, that sounds like an intriguing idea, but you also go like, oh, well, okay, which one? Which energy, which human energy are you trying to unleash? Because as human beings, we can unleash an incredible amount of positive energy. You know, as parents, if you have kids, you can unleash an incredible amount of their potential by raising them in a psychologically safe environment. But we're also pretty good at unleashing quite awful kind of energies, such as aggression, such as fear, such as stress. As managers, as parents, you can do both. So one of the things which I think it's interesting to reflect on is, what is the kind of environment that I need to create as a person, as a manager, as a parent, if you have children, that would allow the people around me to truly unleash positive energy, positive human energy. Because as human beings, we have both potentials. We can unleash fantastic energy, but we're pretty good at destroying things as well. So, as Andy mentioned, there are a couple of ideas which might be interesting to distinguish, because this notion of psychological safety has become pretty popular over the past 5-10 years. And as everything that tends to become popular, there's quite a lot of interest and quite a lot of confusion around it. Many organizations are trying to do something about psychological safety without truly understanding what it is. And one of the things that many companies try to do is to impact their employees' mental health. So let's make a distinction here between three ideas: mental health, psychological well-being, and psychological safety. And it's an important distinction because the first two, you can have a little bit of an impact. Where you can really play your game is the third one, psychological safety. So mental health fundamentally is a state, like your physical health. You go to the doctor, he's going to tell you you're healthy or you're sick, and if you're sick, she's going to tell you where you're sick. Mental health is the same thing, okay? It's a state. Either you're mentally well or you have some sort of psychopathology if you have it. Psychological well-being, it's your own experience of your mental state. How do you feel right now? Do you feel stressed? Do you feel tired? Do you feel content? Do you feel satisfied? Now, as managers, senior managers of large organizations, can you impact people's mental health? Yes, a little bit. But our mental health is the product of so many variables. You know, I can have a great boss. I can really enjoy my work. But my private life is not going well. I have problems at home. I have problems with my mortgage. I have problems with my kids. And suddenly my level of stress goes to the roof. Or maybe I have some physical illnesses that impacts me and my mental health with depression and so forth and so on. And my boss can't do much about it. Can you impact people's psychological well-being? Like, how do they feel in the moment? A little bit more. You can impact that as a manager a little bit more by the kind of work that you give them, by the kind of pressure that you put on them. But where you can really make a difference is in creating a psychologically safe environment. So what is psychological safety? Psychological safety is a belief that I have about the environment inside of which I operate. And it's the belief that the environment inside of which I'm operating is safe for me. It's a place where I can express my thinking, my ideas, my concerns, my fears, my doubts, my uncertainties. So it's an environment where I can be myself. Now, that does not mean that it's an environment where everybody feels happy all the time, where you cannot hold people to account. But it's an environment where me, if I'm working for you, if I'm working in that place, I believe I can share my thoughts. I can make mistakes without too much of a severe punishment. Now, if you think about that, that's not a new idea. That's something that it is as old as the human species. We need a psychologically safe environment to perform well. That's not something new. Once again, think about your family, think about your childhood. Did you feel that you could improve when you were a kid? If coming back home, your parents were incredibly angry at you because you didn't take a good grade in school? Or did you feel that you could truly improve and you could truly learn if your parents would help you by understanding your difficulties, by asking you questions, by engaging with you? When we become adults, it's the same thing. We operate at the maximum of our potentiality, of our capacities, when we feel psychologically safe. When we feel stressed, when we feel in fear, when we feel under too much pressure, something else happens, which I'll show you in a moment. So these are the factors that contribute to psychological well-being, meaning that you and I feel well psychologically when these elements are present in our life in different proportions. Basically, when we experience a certain amount of positive emotions, when we feel engaged into what we're doing. Pretty sure you've heard about the mental state of flow. When you are in the state of flow where you can truly engage into the activities that you're doing. When your relationships around you are, mainly positive, they nurture you rather than depress you. When you find meaning in what you're doing, and when you feel that your ideas, they get translated into projects enough. You produce something real. Now, all of these elements, they are much easier for us to experience them in sort of a psychologically safe environment. Once again, psychologically safe environment is an environment where I believe it is safe for me to share my thoughts, my ideas, my concerns, my mistakes, if I made any. Psychological safety, it is a prerequisite for a whole bunch of things. It's a prerequisite for mental health, meaning that if you constantly live in an environment that scares you, that puts too much pressure on you, your mental health, ciao, ciao, bye-bye, okay, after a while. If you suffer from chronic stress, your mental health, bye-bye, ciao, ciao. It's a prerequisite for sustainable performance. Oftentimes, we believe in the illusion that if I put pressure on people, if people are under stress, they perform better because they focus more. Wrong. Okay? If I put people under excessive amount of stress, under excessive amount of pressure, their productivity decreases. Okay? I'll tell you why in a moment. It's not a nice to have, it's essential to perform at a high level on the long term. This is nothing new, okay, truly. Once again, just think about a moment in your life where you felt truly safe psychologically. Is that a moment or a circumstance in your life where you don't perform? Or is that a moment where you're at your best, at the best of your capacities, where you become creative, when you can actually begin to have new ideas and new thinking? So this is nothing new, something that belongs to the human species. Little bit for something for those of us that are interested in performance. Google, which we all like, more or less, during a project, made an analysis of 180 teams from all over the companies asking, what makes you a high-performing team? And gave a few options as answers. Psychological safety was the fundamental factor that explained why some teams performed better than others. Okay, so business is interested in performance. Okay, if you want your people to perform at their best, for you to create a psychologically safe environment is step number one. Actually, in my view, psychological safety is step number one for any cultural transformation, positive cultural transformation. Now, something a little bit more psychological. What happens to us when we are under stress? So why is psychological safety important? Well, let's understand what happens to our brains when we're not psychologically safe, when we are under stress or in a moment of fear. What you have here is a simple model that explains you basically the stress response. When you and I are under fear, we feel psychologically unsafe. You have a whole bunch of these things going on. Pretty sure you're familiar with these ones: adrenaline, noradrenaline, cortisol. This one I never know how to pronounce in English, but they're not good. You know adrenaline. We think that adrenaline is great because it gives you an adrenaline rush. Adrenaline is very useful. So for example, when you're driving on the highway and you suddenly come to a point where there are cars in front of you which are slowing down, and you're driving at 130 kilometers per hour, at least in Italy, that's the speed limit. Suddenly you see cars are stopping right in front of you. You immediately feel that you're grabbing the steering wheel much stronger. You feel pressure here. You feel your jaws are kind of clenching. Yeah, that's adrenaline, which is telling you, focus, right there. Don't forget about everything else, focus. Now, that is very good in the short term. You do that for 6 hours a day or per 8 hours per day, your baseline of adrenaline and cortisol, they become so high that your brain becomes addicted to that. And then you get into the phase of chronic stress, and that's mental health and physical health. Bye-bye, ciao, ciao. Emotional response: anxiety, fear, guilt, feeling of unworthiness, anger, resentment, hate, worry. That's what I was telling you before. Unleashing human energy. Yes. Which one? Because this is energy. Destructive energy. Okay? Then there's a cognitive response, meaning what happens to your prefrontal cortex, to the part of the brain that usually we do our thinking with. Well, we become a little less intelligent, if you allow me this expression. When you and I are under strong stress, strong pressure, in the long run, we become a little bit more primates, a little less Homo sapiens sapiens. I hope I'm not offending anybody. This is something that belongs to the species. I'm not talking to any particular person in the room. But we become stuck in our own head. Our capacity to judge critically a situation is biased by fear, and our behaviors, they go into aggress, inhibition, passive aggression, disruption, blah, 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 blah. You can read them, okay? Basically, if the environment inside of which you or your employees are operating is psychologically unsafe, what you get is the kind of behaviors where communication is not transparent, because they're going to tell you what they think you want to hear. They're going to feel that they have to hide mistakes, and you know, in terms of safety, that means no reporting of near misses, no incident investigation that is done properly. Everything looks good, but everything is more or less fake, because people are not there to tell you what's going on. People are there in order to avoid guilt, to avoid punishment. Okay, so that's what happens to us when we are in a psychologically not safe environment. These are the kinds of behaviors that create psychologically unsafe environment. With a moment of reflection, if you find that every now and then your management style or your style as a parent tends to show these behaviors, don't judge yourself, it's normal. The question here is how much of that, or your style, of your management style is based on that. One of the last questions is, why would we do that? Why would we engage in behaviors that scare people? Why would we, sometimes as parents, would approach the mistakes of our own kids in a way that we know is destructive for their psyche? Why do we do that? Short-term emotional reward. To get angry, it's good. It feels good. I know it's not good, but it feels good. Don't do that again. Told you. Make me feel in control. Does that make a difference? None. Zero. But it's an emotional release. I feel that I am assuming control if I am being aggressive. I feel that I am making a difference if I'm talking to my people in a way, I feel I'm in command. What I'm actually causing in their heads is the opposite effect of that. Because I'm not causing control. I'm causing them to go like, and then they do the opposite of what I'm telling them to do, like kids do at home, okay? But the short-term emotional reward is very important, because it gives us the illusion that I'm handling things, like what you see here when it says oversimplification of complexities. I don't know if you've ever been in a meeting where at some point the boss goes like, just get it done. Thank you. That was a great contribution. But if I'm the boss and I'm saying that, it makes me feel that I'm moving things forward. Okay, what I'm actually saying is, don't do things right, just do them quickly so I'm happy, so I have some good news to report. Okay? So that's why we do it. Anxiety clock, 3 minutes. Good. Now, what happens to our brains when we feel safe? Ta-da! Neurochemical response, these things we like. Okay, the other ones we didn't like that much, these things we like. Dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, orexin, all good, all good. Dopamine is the neurochemical that you get when you go to the gym at the end of your training. You feel a reward. It's the reward drug, okay? It's good for us. It's very good for our brain, dopamine. Don't get too much, but okay. Serotonin, very good. Serotonin, really good, is the happy neurochemical for our brain, okay? Is what keeps us serene and calm and happy. So a good balance of dopamine and serotonin is fundamental for the good functioning of our brain, our mental health, our psychological well-being, and overall our physical health as well. These two, very, very good when you do physical activities on an ongoing basis. Good habits of going out there, running, walking, lots of that happening to us. These ones are very good, both oxytocin, orexin. Orexin is very good for your sleep. Sleep is very good for your brain. If you have bad sleeping habits, not good. Mental health, bye-bye, ciao, ciao again. Okay. Emotional response when we feel psychologically safe, calmness, serenity, mild enthusiasm, etc., etc. Here's what's interesting. If you want people to perform well in a job that involves their brains, their thinking, that's the kind of thinking you want to get going. Cognitive response, rational thinking, analytical thinking, critical thinking, creative thinking, empathy, so forth and so on. And then you get these kind of behaviors, obviously. 1 minute. So what kinds of behaviors they promote psychological safety? We all know these ones, okay? You heard Nikki speaking about it, Will, Teddy. These are all the behaviors which are good in terms of management, okay? There's nothing new in there. But for me, the fundamental point here is to begin to understand that there are some things that work as enhancer of psychological safety and some things which really they go the opposite. And a couple of things here are pretty important. Self-awareness for me is number one. Beginning to understand what my behaviors, what my demeanor, what my leadership style, management style, parenting style produces as an effect out there. Me raising my voice, me being passive-aggressive, me sending a whole bunch of emails at 11 on Friday night expecting results by Monday morning, me telling people to perform more, faster, with more pressure. What does that produce in their brains? That's, for me, the main message about psychological safety. To conclude here, little summary. It's distinct psychological safety from psychological well-being and mental health. Once again, if you're managing an organization, your job or your game, if you choose to play it, is around psychological safe environment. Mental health, it's not in our hands. Psychological well-being, it's a subjective experience, okay? It's not a nice to have, it's fundamental to the human species. It's essential for high-performing safety and well-being culture. Influences whether someone will speak up or not. People don't speak up if they don't feel safe to do it. You can do all the stop work authority procedures that you want. If they don't feel safe, they are not going to speak up. They might do it once or twice. You cannot ask people to be a hero 7 days a week. It's dynamic and it increases as trust builds, starts with you, the leaders. That's it. Thank you very much.